Welcome, everybody, to your favorite podcast, Crossing the Line with Greg Heym. It's great to be here today, and we have two extra special guests. In this corner from CrossCountry Mortgage, Scott Nadler, loan daddy himself.
It's good to be
Welcome
back.
to the program. Yeah, you got a nice tan work in there.
Thank you.
All that hair just showing me and Shar up. And he's the Sedgh in Sedgh and Zuckerman.
There you go.
Shar, Sedgh, everybody.
I like that.
So I'm surrounded by a banker and a lawyer. Good for me.
Run.
Could be worse.
Well, if I get arrested or I need a loan, I'm in the right spot. I don't even have to get up. That's good.
That's true.
Everybody have a good weekend?
I did. A fantastic weekend. I went to...
What Scott Nadler thing did you do
Well,
this
it was
weekend?
my sister's birthday.
Okay.
And I feel like I failed as a brother because one of her friends texted her. She turned 42. And one of her friends texted her Jackie Robinson. And she had no idea what he was talking about.
That was the number for Jackie Robinson.
Correct. That was Jackie Robinson's number. So I said, I think I failed as a brother, knowing that like she should know that.
Yeah. You also said her name on air, which probably is strike two on you.
That's okay. She can handle it.
Does she even watch the podcast?
We went to Cafe Wa. I'm sure you've been there before.
Awesome.
No. If it's a cool place, I have not
That's
been there.
awesome. You could probably perform there.
That is you would love it. It's live music, a live band. They play covers.
Again,
and,
did you not get the invite?
it
I don't
wasn't,
get
my, it
Nadler
wasn't
invites.
my birthday.
No, but you know the place. You think like,
You know, we're going to have a crossing
a little
line
show party or something like that?
soiree at Cafe Wa.
Why aren't we doing it
Yeah.
weekly? Why do we got to build up to it?
It's a
Yeah, once
it's
the show-
it's a pricey spot.
You got the money.
Once a show hits a certain threshold,
Okay.
a certain number of
Yeah.
episodes, you should go do it.
Okay, well, we're on episode 69, so maybe 70. Who knows? 75?
There you go. We're getting close.
Well, technically, it's season 2, episode 21. I have to say that, or Lena yells at me very, very loudly.
She wants people to know we got picked up for a second season. It's
Yes.
it's not the one season continuing to go. I get it.
Okay, well,
It's all marketing.
Just keep writing the checks and we're good. So, Shar, you had a nice Father's Day. We talked
nice
to
Father's
before.
Day,
Your
yes.
second one.
Second Father's Day,
Happy
becoming
Father's
a
Day.
veteran. My wife was very sweet, brought me breakfast in bed.
didn't
A
get
little
any
bit
of that.
cliche. It looks great on TV, but the logistics of it really just don't work. So
No, you got to have
we
one of those
did- we
special
did the-
trays. That
We got the
balances
tray.
it.
You need a tray for the tray, but so we got the photo out with my little boy of a 1.5-year-old, and then we went to the table and ate breakfast like regular people. But A for effort really embarrassed me. I wish Father's Day was before Mother's Day, so that way my wife can set the threshold, and then for Mother's
Then you
Day,
know how
I can
little you have to
exceed.
do.
Or exceed.
Well,
Right.
Let me tell you how my Father's Day morning went. I went downstairs, had to empty the dishwasher, make my own breakfast, make the coffee, while my wife and son were upstairs sleeping. So that was it. That's 27 years of marriage and a 17-year-old kid about to turn 18. So. You know, it starts with like the holidays. You're like, all right, don't get me anything for Christmas. I won't get you anything. Let's just go buy something we want, kind of thing.
Were they giving you peace and quiet though?
So
That's every Sunday because
that's
my
what I was
son's a
gonna say.
knucklehead teenager. He stays up way too late. My wife just loves to sleep when she has the free time.
He's going to be a college graduate next week.
No, high school
Congratulations.
graduate.
High school.
High school.
Oh,
school.
congratulations.
Yes. And early congratulations to my son. I can say this knowing that he's going to graduate because we found that there was never any doubt. And we're going to have a lot of family in, this weekend, which is nice. Although I'm going to have 6 guests in my house, at least for the first night. We'll see how it goes from there. I may have to kick some people out.
You'll appreciate that peace and quiet a lot more next weekend.
Well, and then, in 2 months, we'll be empty nesters, so to speak, when my son goes up to UB. So, Father's Day is a special time. I lost my dad in 21 to Alzheimer's, so it's always a special thing. We talk about him a lot, and I always perform "Song for My Father" a lot, the great Horace Silver tune. Makes me think of him because I used to play it for him all the time. Right. So I'm glad we spent a little time thinking about our fathers and what they accomplished and how they sacrificed for us to be on this podcast today.
Absolutely.
I'm sure he'd be really proud of you.
Yeah, he was. I only wish he would have, seen me doing full gigs more because I'd only started getting my own gigs when he unfortunately, started to decline rapidly. Because he loved going to see live music as it is, but if it was me the whole time, actually it probably would have been just grabbing women to dance with because that was his MO. And they loved it. My wife loved dancing with him because my mother always yelled, "Bill, you gotta fall."
That's great.
But he never did.
I'm a big classic rock guy also. And when some people get into my car and I put on the music, they'll hear, "Why are you putting on the oldies?" I said, "This isn't oldies.
It is oldies.
These are classic rock." And then all of a sudden you start seeing like
if our age, if we're
Weezer on
listening to it.
Q1043, and it's like, that's not classic rock.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that old time band Nirvana.
Exactly.
Right?
It's
One of
true,
those
though.
guys.
It's true, though.
All right, coming to you as always from beautiful Studio 1873, and we'll begin the real part of the show right after these messages.
Your dream home is closer than you think. I'm Scott Nadler, VP of Mortgage Lending at CrossCountry Mortgage, and I'm here to get you the perfect loan to match your perfect home. From first-time home buyers to seasoned homeowners, I've helped clients make their moves with confidence. Ready for a smooth, stress-free home buying experience? Let's get you moving today. Call me and let's turn those dreams into keys.
Sedgh & Zuckerman is a boutique residential law firm guiding you and your clients every step of the way with a solution-oriented approach. Make sure to work with a deal maker and not a deal breaker. Contact us today at sznylaw.com.
All right, well, the big news last week was inflation, isn't it always?
Always.
But consumer prices up just 0.1% in May. Now, that'll put a smile on even our faces. Nice. You're a lawyer. Don't smile too much. People are going to get suspicious.
My first job out of school, my boss said, stop smiling so much.
Yeah. Nobody.
This isn't for me.
Ray, nobody has ever said that to me. Stop smiling so much. I only smile at lunchtime. That's it. So we are talk about how tariffs are going to stoke inflation. Inflation's going to go back up. And so far, no. And, I've explained why. We're going to get into this even more in a minute. But, you would have thought by May this would have shown up. These tariffs, some of them have been paused, but a lot of them took effect. But still no sign of any. And when you hear in a minute the two notable products that had declines in prices, you'd be like, these are things we import all the time.
Yeah.
All right, so.
Also, the 3-month run rate and 6-month rate are significantly lower.
Yeah.
So I think the 3-month went from 1.5 to 1%, and the 6-month went from 3% to 2.6. Those are pretty substantial numbers.
Right. And the interesting thing about May, it's the fourth straight month CPI rose less than expected. So even the forecasters still aren't getting it, that this is moving in the right direction. Year over year, the headline number, which includes everything, up 2.4%, kind of close to the Fed's 2% target. Now, we know core inflation, which excludes food and energy prices because they're very volatile, also rose 0.1%, also below forecast, and is up 2.8% year over year.
Right.
Why is it running higher? Energy prices.
Yeah.
Energy prices have come down. Now we have another war beginning, it seems, which has rattled the oil market, although things have calmed down from an economic standpoint so far. Obviously, it is a very serious problem going on, and they'll be adding more uncertainty, the uncertainty that was already on top of the uncertainty.
And that was interesting to see on Friday because you would expect mortgage rates to start to drop as a result of that. But because of the threat that the oil markets could be rattled, you saw the bond market actually get hit.
Right. And this is like the bizarre world we're living in when it comes to mortgage rates. We'll get into that in a little. I keep saying we're going to get into things. What am I talking about that I can't talk about it now? So, again, we know that some of the tariffs have been paused. So we're waiting to see. But here's the interesting thing. When you look at some of the specific categories, like apparel prices fell 0.4% last month. We import a lot of clothes in this country. My nieces and nephews brag about their $6 shorts and $5 T-shirts all the time. Mm-hmm. New car prices down 0.3%. You go, the steel and aluminum tariffs are still there. Like, I guess these cars were made already and just sitting on lots and they had to get rid of them. You got any thoughts on this, Shar? What are you thinking about this? I mean, we know there was a rush to get stuff in here, right? There was a whole bunch of record imports, which destroyed, the growth in GDP in the first quarter. So do we think there's just this delay, like they have the old product still sitting there?
Right. So I think there's a couple of factors involved. First of all, you said that we know some tariffs have taken effect, some haven't yet, some are on pause. If you ask the average person, are they on, are they off? Is Einhorn Finkel, is Finkel Einhorn? Nobody knows really for the most part, unless you're studying these things, right? And, part of the reason could be that, like you said, they may not have hit the prices yet because they still have inventory that hasn't been impacted by that. Just because there are tariffs on certain items doesn't mean necessarily that prices go up, right? You may have the ability to import these items from another
Right.
country, and people may just be able to absorb these things a little bit better as well.
Right. Those are there's three things that can mitigate how much it goes up. You get it somewhere else, the producer eats the costs, or the value of the dollar rises. That could make these things affordable. And we're going to have a few statistics on what's happening so far.
I didn't want to say this also, but
Then why are you saying it?
but I have to. I think we have to. We need to give Greg some credit. Because I think
That's right. Lena, come on, clap for Greg's credit.
He deserves an applause. For months and months and months, Greg has been saying that the tariffs are not going to automatically show that prices are increasing. And the amount of emails that he gets saying that he's wrong, and he continues to be bags of emails, continues to be steadfast on his approach. I mean, he's a chief economist for a reason. And it made me think. I was reading an article.
Nobody else wanted the job.
I was reading an article, and it was talking about how it's so important for us to separate the noise from the signal. And remember when you used to listen to the radio? I remember being a kid, I only had a radio in my bedroom, and you would listen to a Knicks game. And you'd have to dial you'd have to turn the dial.
Right, that's it.
Yes.
It's making noise.
Or like the static, you have to make sure you hit the right spot to hear the game perfectly. Absolutely. So there's no external noise happening. And I think for us, and we've talked about this before, as far as all the noise that's out there, there's a ton of it.
Right.
And when you can separate that noise and really focus on the signal, and that's what you do a really, really good job of, and it allows us to see things a little bit more clearer than I think the general market is seeing.
Well,
And I'm done. I'm going to walk out now.
And I'm not the only one saying this. There's plenty of other economists pointing this out. Again, inflation, too much money chasing not enough goods. We haven't raised the money supply. So we have same amount of money, right? Lena's shaking her head. Yeah, we want more money. Of course we do. So if I'm paying more for one thing, that means I'm going to buy less of other things. So certainly the prices of the goods you're tariffing are going to go up. Although so far, new cars, you would still think, why not take advantage of raising the prices right away? If you're a business, people know,
get ahead of it.
Get ahead of it, be a little greedy. You could do that. I'm not saying you should, but you could do that.
Well, the problem could be that the prices for cars are already so high after COVID.
Who's going to notice another couple of percent?
You know what? But people's budget, and I feel like they know that better than anybody else. They know where their price point is and where the breaking point is. Yeah. But people start drawing back on things like vacations and things like that. But if you look at that jobs report, most of the new jobs were in hospitality and leisure also.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense.
No, none of this makes sense. But look, any way you look at inflation, CPI, PPI, PCE, and the other three-letter abbreviations you may have.
You made two of those up for sure. You made two of those up.
Well, I could have thrown in core data there too. And, the rate of inflation is coming down. And remember, that's what we call disinflation. That's what we have now. What we dream about is a world of deflation when acts like energy prices, although before the hostilities that broke out between Iran and Israel, energy prices have been coming down very nicely. Now that's going to be a little volatile going forward, obviously. So what does this mean for the Fed? Actually, they're meeting this week. They're probably just going to go play golf or something because they're not doing anything.
Not anticipating anything.
And
what do you think? But considering the inflation numbers,
yeah,
and what's happening in the labor market, what should they do?
Well, they have room to cut if they want to cut
and still be restrictive.
Right. I mean, you're still talking about a federal funds rate over 4%. Yeah, you could take it down 0.5%. It probably wouldn't make much of a difference in the inflation front. I think a lot of that's going to be driven more about, the volatility going on. And if there are shortages of things, especially with all the turmoil, and obviously if the price of oil goes up, which it certainly could, that could raise prices more than tariffs would. So
that's the thing. Do we even want them to cut? Because last time there was a series of rate cuts, we saw interest rates rise by 1%.
Well,
so I think, I
it's hard, right? We cut a full % last year and nothing has gone down.
Correct.
So
the administration would say, though, with inflation flat, though, you should be lowering those rates. But I feel like the Fed's going to say, let's sit tight and see for all the reasons you just said why
Jerome
they don't
Powell
impact
keeps
it.
saying, like, look, you got to straighten this tariff stuff. You can't keep pausing this stuff. And now this Treasury Secretary is implying that they may extend that 90-day pause if need be. Because you have to negotiate with dozens of countries. You can't do that in 90
It just
days.
puts everything in limbo again for a little bit longer.
And the Fed just gets to take another break, which is good. Usually they make the wrong move anyway. So, we'll just let them.
To your point,
do
though,
their thing.
they can cut without making that big of an impact, and they can start those cuts where it's a little bit more steady.
I mean, if they were to cut this week, you'd see the stock market take off because no one's expecting
no one's
it.
expecting it.
The markets are betting on September. So, but you go back to what you said about mortgage rates, right? You see job growth still decent, but slowing, right? You see inflation coming down. You see a stock market that's been incredibly volatile, although up slightly for the year. You would think, as inflation comes down, mortgage rates get, and the exact opposite is happening.
Right.
A lot of that is being attributed to the tariffs, the government's debt, all this stuff. It's bad, right?
Right.
Well, when are you going to cut mortgage rates, Scott Nadler? You have that power, don't you?
How much time do we have here? I will say, though, with this Fed meeting, obviously I don't think they're going to do much.
It's a statement they put out. I think it's going to matter.
The dot plot, which sounds like a medical exam, but the dot plot always is going to show us what everyone's thinking and when they anticipate rates to ultimately drop. So I think that's where the main focus for the market is ultimately going to be.
It's funny because they get to make predictions about what they are going to do.
Correct.
It's interesting. Like I predict we're going to, do a good show today.
Right.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's my big prediction.
Yeah.
So, again.
Lena's shaking her head.
No. It's just, so, as long as this trade war goes on and the deficits and the budget fight and the turmoil in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine, it's going to be a volatile world that we live in. And, that's why mortgage rates are still in the range is kind of widened a little bit. So it's almost, getting more broad by the minute. But
I did see an article where it said, and I wanted to steal this, but I'll give them credit. It was John Molden, who's an economist. He writes this article or this weekly newsletter, and he said, stop using the word uncertainty. Stop saying uncertain. When is anything in life certain?
Yeah.
Never is. So he said,
death and taxes.
Death and taxes. That's it. So he said, start using levels of confidence. Like, how confident are you? You're extremely confident. You have no confidence. You're moderately confident. I think that's a good way of phrasing kind of where we think things are.
All right. So there we talk about tariffs.
Maybe you don't.
Well, no. I look. When have you had certainty other than that the Nixon Rangers weren't going to and the Jets weren't going to win anything? I
was really optimistic.
Things like that. They're not.
Irrationally optimistic.
I notice I left the Yankees out of that.
Yeah.
Just got swept by the Red Sox. It's nice of the Red Sox to trade Rafael Devers right after he homers, and beating us in a game. That's the way of saying, you know what, we waited to do this until we swept you guys. Thanks a lot, Boston. How many World Series rings do you guys have? Anyhow, so
we just lost our Boston viewers.
all two of them? I don't know. Sorry, Boston viewers, we don't need you.
Were there any left after the Celtics lost to the Knicks?
No, that's true.
They have enough championships.
Yeah, they have plenty of, and New England's got plenty. Just enjoy those teams, okay?
Yeah.
Like I enjoy the Yankees.
Yeah. And there's a whole
And
generation.
my Ron Guidry bobblehead.
Whole generation of Boston kids that don't realize how tortured that city used to be.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about it too, there's a lot of kids that are 16 years old that have never seen the Yankees win a World Series.
That's crazy.
I mean, just think about that. All right. So there was an article about 3 reasons the tariffs haven't driven prices higher. Like they said it was immediately going to, now it's like, well, then there's reasons why.
That's not what we meant, Greg.
Not what you meant?
That's like what the articles are saying.
We didn't say when it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like it's going to rain.
You're taking our words too literally.
I didn't say when it was going to rain, but all right. So number one, companies, were bringing in large amounts of product before the tariffs took effect. We saw that in the first quarter GDP number, which made it negative, so that we knew there was heavy record imports coming in. And okay, I'll buy that to a certain degree. Number two, the time it takes for these charges to make their way into the real economy. That sounds like a bunch of jibber jabber to me. I don't know what that means. Does that mean you're balancing the stuff that was here before with the new stuff, and you got to find middle ground? I don't know what that means. Anybody got an idea? You're a lawyer. This sounds like legalese to me.
I can certainly talk my way around this one if you'd like.
Say what you feel.
But I'm sure there are companies who are thinking about having trust with their longstanding clients also, and customers. And the first time, the first indication of the stuff hitting the fan. I got to say it that way, right? You're going to jack up prices.
We prefer it, yes.
Yeah. So
my mother will yell at me if we allow potty mouth on the show.
But some companies might be saying, all right, let's weather this storm. Let's see where it goes.
And Home Depot is one. Home Depot has come out and said they're not raising prices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go.
They're just making that much money.
And also you got to see where people's margins are as well. Some companies may have the margins to be able to absorb the short-term increase in prices while they figure this out, and some companies may not have any choice but to do that. So I think there's a lot of static and noise that you need to add into this instead of putting it just into a box and figuring out why the tariffs haven't impacted this yet.
I think we also underestimate the business acumen of some of the business leaders that we have here. And these are really smart, sophisticated people who are ahead of, just like yourself, who know what's coming on the horizon. They have ways of navigating it. They understand what their competition is probably going to do, and they have ways of they want to stay competitive. And to Shar's point, they want to keep their customers happy.
Right.
And there's a reason China tries to copy every single thing that we do here. We have very smart people.
At least somebody's trying to keep me happy, Anyhow,
but what do
I
you
just
think
spent 5 minutes
here?
complimenting you.
If there's no, you said don't use uncertainty, but if there's no certainty on where these tariffs go, do we just stay in limbo for a while until there is, or at some point?
We heard last week. It's like, we got an agreement with China. It's like, okay, then why is the market down today? It was like, wait, like that's how suspicious we are.
Right?
Like, can we see Can Shar review the legal documents for us? Can we actually see that agreement? Where's the presser with them like shaking hands? I guess you got this going on, the budget's going on. There's a lot people are focused on. But again, we've been through a pandemic. We've been through financial crisis. We've seen terrorist attacks. We've gotten through this stuff. And like we said, we've been saying forever about embracing the chaos. Buy it while things are hitting the fan because it's cheaper then. And that goes to the third thing is, companies don't feel they have that pricing power right now because consumers are tightening their belts. I have to tighten my belt because I lost weight, but
I got fed on Father's Day. I got to loosen my belt.
Wow. See, I was gigging on Father's Day. I didn't get a chance to sit around and eat and drink. I watched my wife and son do it, but it looked fun when they did it. All right, so just another quick hit on this. The New York Fed did a survey of companies in the New York area, and see, this contradicts what we've been told. 75% of companies have already raised prices because of tariffs. Now, this survey was conducted at the beginning of May, so that should have shown up in the May CPI data when they did these surveys, but it did not.
Right.
And it said almost a third of manufacturers and about 45% of service firms have fully passed along all their cost increases. No way. No way. Maybe it's just New York did that because New York's mean. I don't know. I'm sure Massachusetts did it because they're also mean. But, I mean, what would the rest of the country not do it?
So you have to dissect this, right? So lawyers learn how to do critical reading. I'm sure you do as well.
It's so good to have a lawyer in the room.
Within reading the first 1, 2, or 3 paragraphs, if you get that far, these days it's just headlines, you can tell where the writer of the article is trying to take your thought process. Right. And very often, you throw out these stats and people may take them as fact, but how are you determining 75% of companies are doing this?
You're asking them, and who are you talking to? Now I worked
what
for
kind of companies are they?
Right, I worked for the BLS, same company, the same agency that does the CPI. I worked on unemployment data. You're talking to people who are answering you. You assume you're getting the full picture, but these are voluntary surveys. People can hang up on you if they want, and there is a quality issue with it, but. Maybe they intend to. Maybe they just didn't get around to. I remember I used to work in Sam Goody when I was in high school.
Love Sam Goody.
And we used to get these markdown, notices, and we'd have to go through with the the old thing you see in supermarkets, to put the new prices on. And it was always terrible, and it was something we had a lot of. Like in the old days, Lena, we had VCR. Then we had VCR holders, like these big things.
I just converted all my dad's VCRs into digital, by the way.
Is there anything worth watching?
It was amazing. The first one he watched until his mom got on the screen, he started crying, and then he hasn't turned them on since.
Oh, wow.
But they're great memories, by the way. Anecdote. Go ahead.
No, that's great. All right, so
I will say to that also, what people say and what they do could be different things. And we've seen this during political season as far as who people are going to vote for.
Yeah.
You could see people in surveys saying one thing and actually doing something else. And that's been pretty common. So I wonder from a strategy perspective, if business leaders are saying they're going to do something, just to maybe tip their hand against their competition and do something else. So to Shar's point, looking through, reading through the tea leaves, so to speak, I don't know. You need to take that information with a grain of salt.
Right. Well, and a lot of major retailers have been in the news talking about how they've already increased some prices and expect to do it more. It's almost like everybody's making threats. Mm-hmm. We're going to tariff you. We're going to tariff you back. We're going to raise prices. We're going to raise them more. It's enough to make you want to take a break. So let's take a break for this message from our sponsor.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Hi, I'm Evan Greenberg with Langdon Title. I specialize in title insurance across New York, helping real estate attorneys, agents, and brokers close with confidence. I solve problems fast and keep your deals moving. Contact me anytime.
So my good friend Scott Nadler, by the way, I've been watching this show called Stadium Lockup.
Okay.
It takes place in the Cleveland Browns Stadium, and they show the surveillance. Mm-hmm. So this one guy they had to keep threatening and finally, kick him out because he was banging on a sign on like third downs.
Okay.
It was a CrossCountry mortgage sign. So you guys just got some great publicity on this show.
Is that real?
Yeah, it's real. It's a great show. I just recommend watching it. Anyhow, that's
guerrilla
it.
marketing.
Yes.
So
we have rowdy fans. We have rowdy fans all over. Yep.
By the way, don't ever misbehave at a football game. They in the Brown Stadium alone, they have over 500 cameras and 1,000, security people, which include a lot of cops. And
he was well
cops.
Compensated. It's okay.
He got a mortgage rate reduction, I'm sure. All right, so Scott texts me these things, these brilliant ideas he has. And
shower thoughts.
No, shower thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great thoughts coming while you're taking a shower.
You sing them to yourself because you're in the shower? It's
exactly.
Like, talk about it. So we decided, he's like, why don't we, it's mid-year, kind of, let's do like a mid-year kind of report card thing.
Yeah.
So I spent all this time on Father's Day compiling all this data. But we're not
I feel like I'm being blamed.
I didn't want to sleep in.
Your wife should have done this for you.
She was too busy sleeping and going, he's emptying the dishwasher. So we're just going to look at kind of where the beginning of the year was and where we are now and just kind of see how we feel about that. Now, the GDP is a bad one to look at because GDP ended last year pretty good, was negative slightly in the first quarter this year because of the rush in of imports.
Yep.
The Atlanta Fed's forecast for second quarter GDP is almost 4%.
Yep.
So that's not a good way to look at it. So let's look at personal consumption expenditures. So in January, it was slightly negative, down 0.1%. The latest numbers we have for that are April. We'll get May's numbers at the end of this month, but not much higher, 0.2% positive. So it's been mostly flat, if you want to say. It's not a big variance. It was big in March because everybody was buying everything before the tariffs took effect.
Yep.
So this data has been very wonky, and you're going to see that as we go through a lot of this stuff. So I guess the amazing thing, though, is people are still spending, right? But it's at a rate where maybe these companies are saying, we got to eat some of these costs, We'll tell the New York Fed people that we're passing it all along, but we're going to eat some of it. No, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, right? We're going to have a disclaimer put on Char's going to write that for us. And then Scott's going to
These
bail me
opinions
out
do
of
not
jail.
reflect that
of Shar or Scott, but definitely Greg. So, all right. So we talk about the stock market too. Now, the stock market for this year is up 2%. Mm-hmm. That may not sound exciting because the last 2 years it was up over 20% each. But if I'd have told you we'd be up 2% 2 months ago, you'd have been like, there's no way that's happening.
We talked about that here, the amount of hysteria in the market in terms of looking at tariffs and what it's going to do and people moving their money. We were talking on the show about, I know people who sold a lot of their stocks ahead of, what the administration was ultimately doing. And we were saying all along, wait and see. Let's kind of take a breath. Let's see kind of how this ultimately transpires. But yeah, from start to finish with everything that's happening, there's a 2% change.
A V-shaped recovery, so to speak, if you think about it, right? I mean, we were watching and you see these big declines and it's like, wow, we started off the year on fire and all of a sudden, but, we talk about soft data, right? And consumer sentiment and consumer confidence and how that's rebounded quickly after hitting lows we hadn't seen in years.
It's a resilient market. For sure.
Well, that's good.
Well, if you ask the average investor how the market's, how the economy is, the first thing they look at is their portfolio and see how the market's doing.
That's all they care about.
That's all they care about. That's right. And so when you talk about sentiment, things like that, that's what it is. And I bet if you told most people that we're up 2%,
they wouldn't believe it.
They wouldn't believe
I go ask people how much you think the market's down just to see what their answer is.
Right.
And they're like, 20% easy.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
okay, I guess you're not heavily invested because you would know exactly how much.
Or the smart ones don't look because they know they're long-term investors.
Correct.
So they
could
be brilliant.
It's funny. You talk to people that say, I don't care how the economy's doing. I just need my investments to do well. And okay. Yeah. You're allowed.
So I'll tell you something smart that he said that I actually say myself now and give you zero credit for. I'm sorry for that.
For those of you listening, he's looking at Scott Nadler, not me.
He was in my office for a closing. Somebody asked him, how are you handling this crazy market? And when rates were really high and people really were, and he said, you know what? I just put my head down. I go out there, I network, I touch as many people as I do, and I work on what I can, and that's all I care about. That's all I need to worry about. And that's really smart, and you're right. So, people only worry about where it's affecting themselves, and that sentiment may not be relevant to everybody else.
It can change like that.
Exactly.
And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So inflation, and I use CPI for this because we have May CPI data. Mm-hmm. 3.3% at the beginning of this year, just under 2.8. That's the year over year core PCE. So that's improvement. That's like, 0.5% improvement. We'll take it.
For sure. And again, as we were talking about, the 3-month run rate for core is 2.2 to 1.7%.
It's
that's the Fed target is being at 2%, although they've kind of gone back and forth on that now.
Well, it's dynamic. They just have to get close. That's what they say. But mortgage rates, have gone down also, but by almost nothing.
Correct.
Start of the year at 6.91.
Did you hear that sentence structure? Did you hear that sentence structure? They've gone down almost nothing.
Yeah. Someone could have tuned out right.
Critical reading. I told you, it's all about critical reading.
It's Monday morning. I look like I can get any of this.
They've barely gone up, and they've gone down almost nothing.
Yeah. The
two ways of presenting the same info.
The punctuation is very interesting.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was wearing a T-shirt, and it said, "Let's eat kids." And then underneath it says, "Let's eat, kids."
Wow.
And it said, "Punctuation saves lives." So
that's the Oxford comma too. When you have a list like
that's
that,
right. Are you pro or con Oxford comma?
Well, I used to have a pair of content people that were working with us on something, and one of them had a master's degree from Columbia, and I gave her something to prove. She goes, "Excellent use of the Oxford comma." Oof. So my first question is, "What was that? What's that?" Do you have a list of things?
I'm not
Greg's
a fan.
ate eggs, bacon, and whatever, grapefruit. You have to put a comma after each thing, or people it may sound incorrect.
Not that
like
last one,
like Nadler's eating children example, which we do not condone here at all, for sure. Thank you, Ray. Ray's a vegetarian, so he would never do it.
We're gonna edit this.
All right, so The unemployment rate's up a little bit. It's 4.2 versus 4, not a big deal. Job growth actually higher than it was in January, slightly.
This is the part that I was focusing
on.
on.
All right, so then I did this just for Scott, and this was not as easy as you think, Scott Nadler, so you should be thanking me for this. So Scott's a big fan of revisions to jobs data. I'm all for revising data. I do it in my market reports. But I have the actual numbers. I emailed them to Scott, but he didn't look at them.
No.
So, we can play the guessing game in a minute. So I had to go back and find the original press releases to find out what the original numbers were. Like going back to January, the original job growth in January was 143,000 jobs. That has been revised down because it gets 2 downward revisions.
Correct.
2 revisions. They both have to be downward.
So we're through April, where we've had...
Well, with May, it has no revisions.
Correct.
So if we take January through April, how much did we overstate jobs?
143,000.
Higher.
It was even higher than that.
The big one was March. March was a huge revision.
Okay. So 160?
Higher.
Wow. Close.
All right, we're not going to play this game. 219,000 jobs. Just.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So when we talk about the strength
about
of the labor market, this is the and this happens with all news. The headline gets all the attention. The revision, the revised story with the actual numbers gets no attention.
Like the correction.
And it always happens, right? So this is roughly 50,000 jobs a month that we are overestimating. What could that do to mortgage rates? I mean, mortgage rates theoretically could be down 0.5% right now if those numbers were accurate. That's a significant change that can help a lot of home buyers and open up the market a lot more.
Well, let's look at the first 5 months of the year. May has not been revised, so we're just going to count it as not being revised.
Do you want to bet that it's going to be revised lower?
Okay, we'll see. So, counting May, just to give you a fuller, we've added 619,000 jobs this year. Pretty good. Mm-hmm. It's over 100,000 a month. That's good. Originally, it was 838,000. So you get the want thing. But remember, why are they revising this data? Well, they collect the data in the middle of the month. And some things happen at the end of the month, right? Strikes, storms, things like that don't get captured right away. There's been issues trying to time the government, the Doge cuts. So, when you're sampling things, the more data you get in, and this will be benchmark revisions next year. So you're always chasing a moving target with data. And, one of the things that's come up a lot lately, you may have seen, BLS faced Doge cuts. People that left were not replaced. And there's a lot of concern if that's going to affect the quality of the economic data. Now, we could argue that they're making major revisions before they cut, these
Correct.
jobs. So who knows if there's a fact. Plus, the seasonality of the economy keeps changing. It's not like it used to be. They always have to revise the adjustments that they do make. I don't know. What's your feeling? And we know where Nadler stands on all this stuff.
So it's also important to understand how do you define the job growth, right? So if somebody gets laid off but they're on severance, they're not technically unemployed,
and they're considered employed until
Exactly.
the severance run. That's why
Exactly.
the government employees are on there, because a lot of them got 8 months, I think it was, of pay. So that number is going to continue.
Exactly. So when you look at some of these numbers, you may want to see what was going on months before and whether that's impacting the unemployment now. So that seasonality of it may be a little bit different as well.
March was a bad miss, though. March, the revisions, it went from 228 to 120. That's a big.
The other news that we didn't get to from last week, which goes hand in hand with this, is the initial claims.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to get.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you'd have read the email, this guy's he's a sponsor. He thinks I don't have to show prep. Well, what the hell? Job openings down 5% from the beginning of the year. A lot of was made of that in March, but the April data showed an uptick. Mm-hmm. So, again, this kind of V thing going on is nice. Jobless claims at the beginning of the year were 205,000 the first week, 248,000 the latest week that we have, which was an 8-month high, and everybody started to panic. And you have to point out that it's still 100,000 less than the average over the history that they've been collecting this stuff. So weekly data is always volatile. A lot of this could be temporary circumstances, as we talk about. It can do real damage to weekly data. Monthly data is bad enough. So we'll see what happens. You got to smooth that out over, like a 4-week or 6-week moving average just to make sure you don't drive Scott Nadler crazy. Consumer sentiment, the index was 72 beginning of the year. Now it's 61. So it's 16% lower. But again, look at the V.
Right.
You were reading headlines like worst in 10 years.
Correct.
And then we got the pause, with China, and it's like, okay.
I feel better.
Better than expected. Here's the one that upsets us. Well, I'm just guessing it's going to upset everybody. Monthly budget deficit. So in January, we ran a $129 billion deficit. Latest month, May, $316 billion deficit.
It's wild.
So that's 146% increase.
Yeah.
Now, again, this is volatile. We'll see. They're trying to get a budget deal done now, which could, some people say, add a couple $1 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. I could certainly believe that because government seems to just spend money no matter who's running it.
Or who's paying for it.
Well, we know who's paying for it. I think, there's a lot. Another thing, too, because this is real estate based, the SALT cap is originally proposed to raise that to 40,000. Now that's going to go lower, it looks like. Because, again, something that only affects a handful of states, there's no interest in fighting that fight. So it could be 30,000, it could be less, or maybe it'll stay at 10. All we know is things are going to change a lot. But it seems like they're not going to have it done before the 4th of July. We'll see. All right, let's take one more break, and then we're going to have a quick topic, which everybody's going to participate in if they'd like.
Ultimate Diamond is New York City's most established family-owned jeweler. With over 65 years of experience, Ultimate is renowned for its exceptional, custom-crafted diamond jewelry, its bespoke engagement ring designs, and its ability to source rare, distinguished timepieces. Ultimate has built a legacy of timeless craftsmanship and discretion, making it a trusted name among those who value refined luxury. Learn more at ultimatediamond.com.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
All right. I know we're running a bit long here, but this could be fun. Saw an article of the top 5 things Americans waste money on. Ray's laughing already. Jets tickets might be one of those things, But, all right, here is the list. Frequently eating out. I don't view that as a waste of money. It's fun to do. Impulse buying from online retailers. We all know about that. Buying convenience food and beverages. This is one my mother used to yell at us about when she lived with us. Discarding leftovers or expired food excessively. How do you excessively discard expired food? Isn't it just it's expired? My father always used to say, "What are you throwing that out for? It only came due
You're
last
constantly making food. You have leftovers, and you're constantly throwing it out.
No, but expired food, I think that would be something that has an expiration date. How do you know? So you just smell it and you know it's expired. I don't
Suggested
Okay.
expiration date.
And this one has
I agree.
become more popular. The 5th one is paying for unused TV streaming services. So, all right, Shar, what are you wasting money on?
I mean, first of all, kudos to whoever wrote this article to break this down to just 5 items because 20 other things popped into my head as well. First of all, with the eating out, obviously a big expense, especially in New York City. Does that count Uber Eats, where you're ordering outside food into your house?
We're going to count it.
I'd love to know how they factor that.
Does that fit under buying convenience food? Like, because it's convenient, you're not going anywhere for it. Huh?
A very popular item now is Instacart. Who has time to go to the supermarket now in the city and lug those around? So all that stuff, of course, I think lumps in there, and that's a big expense people are seeing.
What do you got, Nadler?
What's your position on these things?
I'm pretty good with my money as a lender.
You better be. What's your credit score, Scott? Let's move on.
I would say Ubers, though.
Now, if you want
transportation,
just to get into a yellow cab right before, just to get into drive at night, they start at $9.
Yeah. It could be pricey.
At least with Uber, you know what you're paying. Like you don't get stuck at the end.
Yeah.
Well, I would, I have a weakness for buying guitars, but I don't do it.
How many do you
enough.
have?
A lot. I don't know. I took it started.
Any?
I was rehearsing with someone that I'm
They're all
doing some
named.
gigs with. She's like, "Look at all these guitars here. What do you use them all for?" And I'm like, "You want me to go through them? I'll tell you. This one I don't really use for much, but this is the jazz guitar. This is the whatever."
Anyone used by a famous musician that you love?
Me. No, some of them have been used by my old teacher, Mark Marino.
When you
you're just
perform, you
knock
bring
that out
all
of
the
the park.
guitars
No, I do
and
not.
they like restring them for you. So when you
No.
finish the song, they bring the next one out for you.
No,
Like-
I don't. We don't have
do
roadies
that?
at this stage of our career. I do have a Gibson SG because if you look at the inside
Here we
cover
go.
of Chicago Transit Authority, the first album, Terry Katz's playing an SG. And I thought, that looks so cool. I got to get one of these days. So I have one of those. One of the things I do, I'll admit, and my wife does this too, is we play apps and then we buy credits. That's not a lot of money.
Really?
But Apple, just to stick it to you, gives you one receipt that all of a sudden it looks like a grocery receipt.
What's your game of choice?
I'm not going to say, but it doesn't.
You know what they do?
No, not Angry
The
Birds.
genius of Apple Pay and
Yeah,
the way
just
the way they
double-click,
make
done.
it so easy. And somebody said it great. It said, "I use Apple Pay as if it's Apple paying for whatever I'm buying."
Yeah.
Like it's not real. But
See,
as
my
far
son has something called Dad Pay. Dad's card is tied to it.
but just to go back to it, obviously the monthly subscriptions can add up. There's somebody who was saying, "I'm going to go broke $9.99 at a time." You have $9.99 Netflix, then you need Hulu.
Well,
and then
Netflix is
you have-
more expensive than that now.
Yeah, right. So some are $4.99. You have Spotify, you have Apple Music, and every
YouTube.
time you look at it, what's another $7? What's another $9? But by the time you look back at it, and you're right, not every time do they compile it into one bill.
That's like these insurance scams that go out where they'll send like a $17 check to someone to pay. Like $17 will just pay it, but they're sending it to millions of people all over,
Right.
and you have all these people paying $17 here or there. Like that's how these scams work.
Yeah.
It's not, even if you see a bill for $499, you're going to think twice about it.
There was a big lawsuit years and years ago about phone companies, electric companies adding a $1 fee, a $1.50 fee by accident onto people's bills, and you send it out to the masses. Half of the people pay it. Your numbers are increasing significantly by then. There's a big lawsuit about that.
Well, and then getting back to we talked about convenience foods and beverages, you think like coffee, right? And this is where the whole idea of the latte factor, which has been around for years. I think the thing is people don't realize, and I didn't realize this until I read the book called Your Money or Your Life, which they've just reissued recently, I think, and updated. But if you keep track of every dollar you spend and categorize it, and then divide that by your hourly wage rate to see how many hours you had to work to pay for this stuff, you'd be surprised because people go, I go to Starbucks every day for coffee. What's the big deal? It's like, okay, 6 times 30 is what? It's like you think about that. And all right, so Ray, Lena, do you want to chime in on this? Is there something we haven't mentioned that you think you waste money on? See, for me and Shar, it might be hair care products, but
I save tens of dollars every year on
You got anything here?
I agree with Scott. Definitely the Ubers have been brutal.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm a sucker for online retail shopping, clothes, beauty stuff.
It's amazing. A lot of people do that.
It's bad.
Yeah. So there are people that actually will go into a retail store and instead of trying it on, waiting online and purchasing it, they buy it on the app, right? You just scan it in the store on the app. It'll be in your house tomorrow. You go home, you try it, and whatever you don't need, you ship back.
Yeah.
So again, the ease that they make, you think they're doing you a favor, but they're really grabbing you by making it so easy to spend that money.
Yeah.
Ray, you got anything?
I get some cheap things on eBay every now and then.
Like-
T-shirts.
Like Rick Pitino bobbleheads? No?
Yes.
No, I look, sometimes for me, it's also like I want to solve a problem and I do that quickly and then I realize it creates other problems. It's
Unintended consequences of some of these purchases.
All the information they collect on you about your browsing history, they know right when you're weakest, right? Lena's not right. Like, yeah, they got that. Plus, when you start recognizing your Amazon delivery guys, or ladies, you might have a problem.
One of the problems here also is when you go to like a CVS, everything is locked up. So sometimes it's easier just to go online and buy some of these things. And that since I'm already here, they're suggesting other products for me to buy. And it's like, I just wanted toothpaste and, dishwashing fluid. And now all of a sudden I have a whole Amazon cart filled with things that I didn't even come here.
See, back in the day, like when I worked at Sam Goody's, if you were buying VCRs, VHS cassettes, we'd go, hey, do you need a holder for that? Do you need a cleaner? Because remember the tape heads, right? You had a cleaner. How about a needle for your record player? Do you need that? Was cross-selling. Now it's just like these pop-ups that just come at you, and you're just like, oh, they're in my head.
Right.
If you had Sam Goody coming back at the end of the podcast here for $2, you would have made a lot of money.
Well, there's a big part. There's still one. I checked. There's still one left. Just like there's one Blockbuster left.
I have great memories. I used to open up the CDs and they used to have the names of the lyrics of the songs in the.
Well, see, in the old days we used to have LPs, and then you had posters in there, and really good. You had lyrics. Ray's nodding his head. He's like, I'm still with LPs.
I have a record.
But now you go, if you want to be nostalgic and get one, they're like $30.
Yeah,
that's like more expensive, twice what a CD costs. And it's, I know people like vinyl, but do you like it that much? You're going to pay more than twice. Oh, this reminds me of what I meant to say about the subscription services. What they've done now is confuse you, because now they bundle subscriptions. It's like, you can get Hulu, Disney Plus, and ESPN for this much, and you go,
that's what cable was.
Right.
That's what cable was.
See, now they're like, okay.
Full circle.
Well, it's an example of be careful what you wish for, right? Because first it was like, man, why can't I just pick the channels I want? 90% of these channels I never watch. It's like, okay, you can do that now, but then you realize by the time you add those up, I could have got those channels I don't watch. I'm still not going to watch them, but at least I'll have them. I mean, who knows what I'm going to find on some of these channels?
Seinfeld has a great bit where he says, men, when they watch TV, they're not flipping through to see what they want to watch. They're flipping to see what am I not going to watch. Nope, not that. And by the time you're done, you got to go home, go to bed.
It is tricky, and again, the fact that they can play with your head just by changing the pricing structure. I'm getting too old for that now. I can't be. I may be an economist, but doesn't mean I want to be an economist when I get home. It's like I don't have to call in an accounting company to figure out what's my best deal. Now I have commercials going, this is your best deal. It's like, because commercials would never mislead me at all. Why would they do that?
If you can't figure that out, who is?
We're all in trouble.
Oh, my son can apparently, because he always be like, well, Dad, if we do this, and if we cancel it by this date, then it won't cost anything. And then I see the charge. I'm like, you lied to me.
That's like the credit card points game. You'll get a new card. They'll give you 50,000, 100,000 points. But if you have to spend a certain amount by a certain date, then cancel the card and downgrade the card. It's all a game.
See, all this over a simple little article. See, we've solved the world's problems. That we don't like bundling and like price structure, and that Lena's a sucker for online retail, but we all are. That does not make you any different than anybody else in this room. Again, Amazon. Sometimes it's funny when it comes 2-3 times in a day. So, well, sorry we ran a bit long, but it's the first time to get these guys together, and I think we had a good time.
Great dynamic. Thank you for having us again.
And since we're not having a show next week, we'll just cut this one in half, and congratulations to my son on graduating high school. You had an excellent record. He's going to do
Dad
excellent.
is proud of you. He was talking about you before we were on.
It's true, and he's still growing. It seems like in the last 6 months he had grown. So I actually measured
mentally
him.
or
no, not mentally.
Okay. Did he get your height gene or your hair gene?
No, but he doesn't realize I had a lot of hair when I was 17. Also, it left. When I was in my 30s, it started.
Back when the Beatles were #1 on the billboards.
No. Actually, the Beatles broke up the month before I was born. But still, I'm 55. That shows how long the Beatles have been broken up.
The Yoko Ono of economics.
Yoko is in her 90s and still alive and kicking. I don't know if she kicks, but she's still alive.
One of our listeners.
Hey, Yoko.
Comment. Drop a comment.
See, not only I got Disney bundles in my head, if you watch the Get Back documentary, which is when they were making Let It Be, you realize that Yoko's not what broke up the band, and you watch, the fights that they had. It was not caused by who else was in the room. It was caused by those 4 guys, and the fact that I think they'd had enough of each other at that point. And it's funny, you watch it. It's like when I rewatched when St. John's was in the Final Four in the 80s. I'm like, maybe they'll win this time. It's like, no, they're not. And you're like yelling at the screen, like, Beatles, don't break up. You guys sound amazing. Like, come on.
Listen, it was magic when they were in the room together. So you
Can
gotta
only
appreciate what you got.
In some cases, it just runs too hot. It's like a whirlwind romance. It's got to end at some point. Just like
like this
but not
podcast.
your romance with this show. No. Well, as long as we keep getting sponsors, we love you guys all.
70 episodes strong.
70 episodes.
Congratulations on that. That's a big deal.
Well, that only puts us behind about 400 behind Vince. So we're not going to catch Rocco's 500 anytime soon.
Not with that attitude.
2-a-days. Let's go.
No, as I joked before, I think by the time we catch Vince, Lone Daddy will be Lone Granddaddy.
Oh, granddaddy. Yeah.
That's a dad joke for Father's Day.
Hey, that's all I got. Anyhow, well, that is our show for this week. Thank you
Thank you for having
to
us.
Shar and to Scott and to Lena and Ray, and most importantly to all you listeners and viewers out there. If you really dig the show, tell 2 friends, then they'll tell 2 friends, and so on and so on. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.